I'm Russell Sturgis from EAP Mentor, and today I'm discussing the third topic in a series that I'm doing on mindful divorce. And today I'm looking at the concept of our personal narrative and the way that that impacts on relationships and oftentimes leads to separation and divorce. The concept of the story or the narrative is really fundamental to the Enhancers Awareness program, and it's one of the key things that we do to help people be able to live life being more mindful, being aware of the fact that they have a narrative that impacts on how they live their lives, and in fact impacts in such a way that it has them live a programmed life, one that is subconscious primarily, and one that has been established from early childhood. And of course I talk about in the written blog about the fact that in our formative years we get to watch what it means to be a man and a woman and what it means to be in relationship by virtue of the fact that we see this being played out in every minute of every day. And of course we're such close observers as children that we take it all in, and it becomes part of the narrative that we build around who it is to be either a man or a woman, and how it is that we turn up and function in the world in relationship to that programming that we've received in our formative years. Being able to identify this story is in the way that we approach it in EAP is quite unique, because we go through a process of asking a series of questions that has you maintain the place of being the observer, and instead of inviting you to get caught up in the pain or the joy, of course in some cases, of the way in which your story played out, we have you step back and be the witness of it as we identify two core things that make up the story, and that is, what is it that you wanted most, and what did you do, how did you go about getting it? And most of us have this as an underpinning unconscious way in which we engage the world, in our work, in traffic, when we're dealing with people in maybe retail stores, but more importantly when we're dealing in relationships. And so when we're not aware of our narrative, we are unconsciously engaging survival strategies, call for help strategies, the need to be loved strategies. We come up with a whole lot of things that we play out in order to have the needs of our story fulfilled. And of course, for a time, that often gets met in relationship until somebody realizes that they can't change you, or that who you're in a relationship doesn't change, and then things start to break down. I write about this in the blog. And of course what happens is we come to this point where our needs are no longer being met, and so there's no longer any purpose in you striving to meet the needs of somebody else when your needs aren't being met. Now that's probably oversimplifying it, but it's indicative of what most breakups are about. And I've been through two previous long-term relationships that ended up or resulted in separation, and one was a marriage that resulted in divorce, and one was a long-term relationship that brought a finality to being in relationship. What I can say is that in both cases I continue to maintain a friendship with these people, and in fact work with one of them as a colleague. So there sits within this framework of separation and divorce a capacity to be able to do it in such a way that you don't have to destroy and leave shattered relationships that were once important and once had a significant way in which they contributed to your life experience. And even though those things have moved on and they doesn't mean that those people can't still be important people in your lives, and in the case of my relationship with my wife, that we can still continue to be healthy role models of parenthood, even if it's not in relationship, to our children and our adult children, and that we remain friends with each other and friends, and that we still come together as a family and do things as a family, despite the fact that we're not in a cohabitative relationship. So this narrative, this story that we have, is the programming that comes from how we were raised in our family, what we experienced in our culture. It also includes our DNA, the stuff that's built into those fibres of our very core of our being, and our life's experience. And this sort of cocktail of different exposures ends up with us creating a narrative about who we are, which is seen in the beliefs that we have, the attitudes we have, the desires that we have, and the actions that we carry out, the behaviours that we demonstrate throughout our life. And of course, what happens, being unconscious, we have no idea that this is going on. And so we even move into adulthood with this childhood narrative sitting at the foundation of the decision making that we make in terms of how we engage and experience life. As we become aware of our narrative and begin to realise that the impact that it has is responsible for causing a lot of our stress, our anxiety, our fears, our exhaustion, the diseases that we experience, the challenges in relationship, when we begin to realise how far-reaching this is, we're able to become more aware of an alternative way of approaching life that isn't constrained by that story or that narrative. And as I've discussed in previous blogs, it's when we have an alternative to that programming, we're able to then practice the art of mindfulness, which is remembering that we have a choice. And that's the point at which we're able to adopt a new set of behaviours or patterns of thoughts and beliefs and actions, and those things that define our experience in life. So one of the things that I'm suggesting is that I believe an imperative element that people need to really become familiar with before they make the final decision around divorce and separation is getting an idea or getting a sense of what this narrative is. Because free of their narrative, the relationship might still work. Free of their narrative, it might be possible that these two people can come together in a way that's more respectful and honouring and loving, that is free of the expectations that emerge from that core narrative and story and belief that's dictated people's lives up until that point. And I've been working with EAP long enough to see a variety of responses where people have been able to salvage relationships, in fact have been able to go on to healthy dynamic relationships. I've also seen situations where people became really aware of their stories and realised that it was the neediness and the dysfunction of their story that had brought them together and in fact was not sustainable and moving forward, which meant that people were able to move forward in terms of separating out in their relationship, aware of their stories and being able to be grateful for and respectful of each other as they're able to move on and move forward in their separate lives. So getting the story doesn't guarantee the capacity for anyone to be able to resolve a relationship. But I would like to suggest that, and I make reference to this, that if you're able to become clear about what that narrative is before you complete a relationship, even if the relationship does end, it means that as you move forward, being aware of the story and the way that it has impacted in the past means that as you go to encounter new relationships and the opportunity for new relationships, instead of doing what you've always done, meaning you're going to get what you've always got, which is a relationship which is exactly the same, just with a different person playing the role as you've had in the past, it means that you have the capacity to create a new experience of relationship and invite somebody to turn up and to be able to relate to you in a completely different way to the way in which things have happened in the past. That being said, there's also the opportunity for you to be able to recreate the relationship that you had with a new foundation that's based on truly being able to hear another, to be compassionate, to be benevolent, to be able to authentically listen to another as well as being able to be authentic to yourself, which only comes when we're able to be free of that narrative and that story. So have a read of the blog. I go into my own personal experience about my narrative and the way in which it played out in my relationships and how it undermined my relationships. Please learn from my experience, and I hope you find some insight there. I'd like you to give some consideration to the way in which maybe you have a narrative that's playing out that keeps on causing you to shoot yourself in the foot, that causes you to keep on experiencing stressful and challenging moments within the relationship, as opposed to a relationship that's based on love and mutual respect and authentic listening and compassion. And of course, those relationships are possible, and the one that you're in, it's possible that could even be found there. Anyway, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can email me personally, russell@eapmentor.com. If you want to find out more about the Enhancers Awareness Program, please go to eapmentor.com. And if you want to find out what we have on our Facebook page, and we have some really lovely stuff that's going up on a daily basis there about living in awareness and mindful, go to @eapmentor on Facebook and you'll find our Facebook page. Anyway, thank you for listening, and we'll be back on the scene in a couple of weeks with another blog. Speak to you then. Bye.